heavens themselves bore witness as a mighty wind swept across the land, and fire mingled with lightning illuminated the sky. Amidst this celestial tempest, the very throne of God appeared. To a man named Ezekiel, a priest yet to be called the Almighty,
Son of man,
spoke.
rise, for I have chosen you.
What Ezekiel then beheld surpassed all human comprehension. The resplendent glory of the Most High, upheld by the mystical cherubim, and wheels enmeshed within wheels, covering eyes moving without turning. Above this wondrous sight shone the very radiance of the Eternal One. A divine command followed to take a scroll, to consume it, to make it an inseparable part of his being, and then to prophesy regardless of whether any would heed his words. Yet the message contained within was terrifying. Jerusalem, the holy city, was destined for destruction. Its sacred temple would be consumed by flames, and most grievous of all, the very glory of God would depart from his rebellious people. For Israel had hardened its heart, stubbornly turning away from its Maker. Hope, it seemed, had vanished. Until one day, in a profound vision, Ezekiel was transported to a desolate valley, a landscape utterly devoid of life, strewn only with dust and scattered bones. Upon that lifeless ground, the divine voice inquired,
Son of man, can these bones live?
Ezekiel, gazing into the profound abyss of death, knowing all was consumed, dry and broken, responded with humble submission.
Lord, you alone know.
Prophesy and say to them, hear the word of the Lord.
And as Ezekiel spoke, something unimaginable unfolded. Silence could no longer hold death captive. For though Ezekiel had witnessed the departure of God's glory, he was also granted a glimpse of its triumphant return. Despite Israel's grievous fall, the everlasting God would never break his covenant promise. For when God speaks, the impossible bows to reality. The long, arduous exile in Babylon had begun. The descendants of Israel found themselves in foreign lands, far from their beloved city, far from their sacred temple, and seemingly far from their God. The elders murmured in despair, the priests wrestled with doubt, and the youth struggled to maintain any semblance of hope. While some clung to the belief that their captivity would be brief, that God would swiftly deliver them, the true prophets sent by the Lord had already declared a different fate. The punishment would be long, and for many final. Among these exiles was a young priest named Ezekiel, a descendant of the revered line of Levi. Had Jerusalem still stood, he would have soon begun his sacred service in the temple. But now the temple was a distant memory, his destiny uncertain, and his heart torn between the lingering ember of hope and the creeping chill of resignation. He spent his days by the banks of the Kibar River, where his fellow exiles gathered their conversations, often dwelling on their lost homeland. There he heard the laments of the elders and saw the profound despair etched in the eyes of his people. And there he waited for an answer from God, an answer that until then had not come. One day, Deborah, Ezekiel's wife, approached him, her voice tinged with concern. She questioned his silence.
Ezekiel, why are you silent? Remember your calling.
A priest of what, Deborah? The temple is gone.
Everything has been taken from us. What more can I offer them?
He gazed out at the horizon where the elders were gathered, their faces etched with anguish. One elder, Zadok, drew near, asserting that Jeremiah was still in Jerusalem and that judgment had not fully fallen. He confidently declared that God would never destroy his own house, that he had not abandoned them. Ezekiel, however, challenged his certainty, questioning whether their sins had not indeed turned them away from God. Zadok, dismissive of such doubts, insisted that God would deliver them, that they would return home, that it was merely a matter of time. Ezekiel offered no reply. Deep within, he was not convinced Zadok was wrong, yet an unsettling intuition told him that the ruin was far from over, until one day the heavens opened. It was sudden, dramatic. The wind surged with overwhelming power, and the sky darkened with dense clouds. A sound like the thunderous march of an unseen army reverberated through the air. From the north, a great storm of fire materialized. Ezekiel looked up, and in the very heart of that fire, he beheld the glory of God. There appeared 4 living creatures, their faces a fusion of man, lion, ox, and eagle, each possessing 4 majestic wings. Their feet gleamed like burnished bronze, and they moved in every direction without needing to turn. Beside them were wheels intricate beyond description, wheels within wheels covered in myriad eyes. When the living creatures moved, the wheels moved in perfect synchronicity. It was an indescribable marvel, a sight no human eye had ever truly encompassed. And above it all, a crystalline expanse stretched, and beyond that, a throne radiating majesty. Upon the throne sat one whose appearance was like fire encircled by a rainbow, a vibrant sign of covenant. It was the Almighty God. Overwhelmed, Ezekiel fell prostrate. Then God spoke.
Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak with you.
Ezekiel, still trembling, confessed his unworthiness, his lack of prophetic standing. But the Lord responded, "Behold, I put my words in your mouth. I send you to a rebellious people. You will speak even if they do not listen. You will warn them even if they do not heed. For they shall know that a prophet has been among them." Then God extended his hand, holding a scroll inscribed on both sides with words of lament and judgment.
Son of man, take this scroll. Eat it.
With trembling hands, Ezekiel took the scroll, bringing it to his mouth. Though it contained pronouncements of judgment upon his tongue, it tasted like honey, for he knew unequivocally that God's voice was truth itself. The vision concluded. The heavens closed, and the divine radiance faded. Ezekiel found himself back on earth, Deborah and Zadok staring at him
What
in
has
utter
happened
awe.
to you, Ezekiel?
Zadok, disbelief etched on his face, stammered, "What? What did you see?" Ezekiel, transformed, declared,
I saw the Lord, and he has sent me to warn Israel.
He was now a prophet, God's messenger to a stubborn, rebellious people. And his daunting mission had only just begun. Ezekiel understood the imperative to speak. But how could he convey to his people that Jerusalem would be utterly destroyed, that God's glory would abandon his sacred temple? He was but a man, yet God had commanded him to speak. In the exiles' camp, some gathered around a fire, elders conversing, others gazing wistfully at the distant horizon. Ezekiel approached, standing in their midst, and cried out, "Hear, O house of Israel, the Lord has spoken to me, and this is what the Most High says. Your city shall be destroyed, the temple shall be defiled. For you have sinned against me, for you have betrayed my covenant."
And now, the sword comes upon you.
Elders exchanged troubled glances. Zadok, who had previously argued with Ezekiel, rose in indignation, shouting accusations of lies, claiming God would never destroy his own temple, never abandon his holy city.
God will protect his
Exiles
temple.
whispered among themselves, recalling Jeremiah's similar prophecies in Jerusalem. Yet doubt persisted.
What if it's true?
What if this is God's wrath?
No, don't be
Deceived. God will soon deliver us. Jerusalem won't fall.
Ezekiel looked at Zadok, knowing words alone would not convince him. But God had given him another instruction. He was not only to speak, but to act. God commanded him to perform signs, strange, shocking acts, so that Israel might finally grasp the gravity of the message. And so before the very eyes of his people, Ezekiel began to act. One morning, the exiles gathered around Ezekiel, finding him lying motionless on his side. Children approached with curiosity, while elders murmured amongst themselves, questioning his actions. Ezekiel, get up, some urged. He replied he could not, for God had commanded him to lie on his side for 390 days one day, for each year of Israel's sin. Day after day, Ezekiel remained there, enduring the scorching sun under the constant gaze of his people. Many mocked him, others grew concerned, but none could ignore him. Some dismissed it as meaningless.
God would never let us
fall, they insisted. But when the 390 days passed, Ezekiel turned to his other side, remaining there for 40 more. Then a seed of fear began to take root in the hearts of the people, yet the sign was not complete. One day, Ezekiel rose and began to bake bread. The crowd gathered curious, but when they saw what he baked, it over their faces, twisted in disgust.
Ezekiel, that's unclean! You're cooking over human waste!
They exclaimed. He replied, explaining the grim prophecy. So it shall be in Jerusalem.
So it shall
Those
be
who remain will eat defiled
in Jerusalem.
bread. They will become beggars scattered among the nations, for God has withdrawn his favor. A desperate plea arose.
For God
Is there
has
no hope,
withdrawn his
Ezekiel, the
favor.
city could still repent? But he knew, and
Is
his
there
heart
no
was
hope,
heavy,
Ezekiel?
but they won't listen. Weeks later, Ezekiel appeared with a sharp knife. In silence, he shaved his head and beard. The exiles watched, bewildered. Then he divided the hair into 3 piles. One he burned with fire, another he hacked with a sword. The last he scattered to the wind. The crowd stood speechless. He revealed the dire meaning. Thus will God deal with Jerusalem. A third will perish by famine and plague. Another third will fall by the sword. The remainder will be scattered among nations, but a very few will be preserved.
Could it be true,
A small
what he
remnant
says?
shall live. The people were divided.
What if he was right?
Some vehemently rejected
What if
Ezekiel's
Jerusalem
words.
truly fell?
Others slowly began to believe him. But all held fear in their hearts, haunted by the question, what if he was right? What if Jerusalem truly fell, and Ezekiel knew with grim certainty that soon the inevitable would happen? For God had spoken, and his
Thus
word
says the
would
Lord
not
God,
return void.
An end has come.
Day after
The
day,
end has
Ezekiel
come.
delivered the message, performed the signs, and issued the clear warning. But the people did not listen. Some mocked, others doubted, and few believed. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, the leaders persisted in their grievous sin. One night, the Spirit of God came upon Ezekiel, and in a profound vision he was transported to Jerusalem. But what he saw was not the holy city he remembered. It was far, far worse. Inside the sacred temple, idols stood. Priests worshipped the very sun. Elders burned incense to false gods. And women wept for Tammuz, the Babylonian fertility god. The house of God, once pure, was now utterly defiled, corrupt, desecrated. He recoiled in horror, thinking, "This cannot be. This is where God's glory dwells." But the Lord's glory no longer remained in its rightful place. Then God spoke, asking if Ezekiel saw their abominations, how they had filled his temple with detestable things, declaring, "Therefore I will withdraw from them." And then Ezekiel witnessed the unthinkable. The glory of God began to move. It rose from the Holy of Holies, passed through the temple gates, and there it paused, as if waiting, as if offering one last chance. But the people remained unrepentant. So the glory continued its solemn journey, crossing Jerusalem's walls and resting upon the Mount of Olives. And there it paused once more, waiting. Still, the people remained defiantly rebellious. Then Ezekiel saw what no prophet had ever seen before the glory of God departed. It ascended into the
Lord,
heavens and
Do
vanished.
not leave us like this.
A cry unseen might have risen from Ezekiel's soul, "Lord, do not leave us like this." But it was too late. They had hardened their hearts. They had sealed their fate. Now judgment would surely come. Weeks later, the dreadful news reached Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar had marched against Jerusalem. Famine devoured the city. Nobles died in their grand homes.
Oh,
Priests
God,
cried out,
why have
but
you
God did not
forsaken
answer.
us? Our pleas
And when the
fall
last
on
gate
deaf
was
ears
breached,
in this
the
desecrated
Babylonian
hall.
army poured in with unrestrained violence. The temple was plundered, its altars shattered, its bronze pillars smashed. Finally, God's own house was set ablaze. Flames licked the heavens, and the smoke rising from the inferno marked Jerusalem's end. Then Zadok, tears streaming down his face, turned to Ezekiel, his
It was
voice
true.
choked with despair.
God has forsaken us. Jerusalem has fallen.
Ezekiel, his own heart heavy,
Remember,
corrected him gently.
God did not forsake us. We forsook him first.
And then silence. The people had no temple, no city, no king. The nation of Israel as they knew it had died. But God was not finished. For though judgment had fallen on the distant horizon, a new hope was rising. Jerusalem had fallen. The temple was no more. The people were scattered, many having died in exile, others enslaved. Those who still drew breath wondered if God had utterly forgotten them. But God still spoke.
Has God forgotten us?
For though judgment had come, his grand plan was not yet complete. Ezekiel waited to hear a word of hope. But what God revealed to him next was different. Judgment was not just for Israel. The pagan nations too would face divine reckoning, and God commanded Ezekiel to prophesy against them. Thus, Ezekiel declared the word of the Lord against Tyre, that because she mocked Jerusalem and sought to be great among the nations, God would bring the sea's waves against her, shattering her like a ship in a storm until she was no more. Days later, news arrived from the West Tyre. The mighty merchant city had indeed been destroyed. God had kept his word.
Tyre has fallen.
But more remained. Thus the Lord declared against Egypt that though she believed her river was her own, her waters would dry up. Her land would be given to the sword, and she would never again be a power among the nations. And so Ezekiel proclaimed the end of empires. Ammon, Moab, Edom, Philistia, all fell before God's righteous wrath. For God is not only Israel's God, he is Lord of all the earth. Yet despite these prophecies of divine justice, Ezekiel's heart grew heavy. Israel remained dead without a city, without a temple, without a king. And so Ezekiel dared to voice the question no one else dared to utter. Lord, have you cast us away forever? God answered him, Come, Son of Man, I will show you what is to come. And in a vision God brought Ezekiel to a valley, but this valley was filled with bones, countless dry, forgotten bones. They were Israel. Ezekiel walked among them, each step a stark reminder that his people in their current state no longer truly existed. Then God spoke, Son of man, can these bones live? Ezekiel looked at the bones, no flesh, no life, only dust, only death. Yet he knew that with God nothing is impossible, and he answered with profound humility, Lord, you alone know. Then came the command, prophesy to these bones. Say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will give you tendons, I will cover you with flesh, I will put breath in you, and you shall live. Ezekiel prophesied, and suddenly the bones began to move. They came together, tendons grew, flesh covered them, and before him stood complete bodies. Yet still there was no life within them. Then God declared, Prophesy to the Spirit, saying, Come, O Spirit, from the four winds, breathe upon these slain, that they may live. Ezekiel obeyed, and the wind rushed over them. The bodies filled with life, and before him a mighty army stood alive, a vast multitude. How do these bones are the whole house of Israel, God explained. They say our hope is lost. But I will make you live, I will bring you back to your land, and I will put my spirit in you, and you shall live. Ezekiel understood, whispering, Lord, you will restore us. But God would not merely restore his people physically, he would transform them spiritually. For Israel's deepest problem was not their enemies, it was their own heart. God promised something far greater. I will give you a new heart. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a spirit of flesh. I will write my law within you, and you will never again turn from me. Ezekiel understood God wasn't finished with his people. Restoration would indeed come, but first Israel's heart had to be changed. Yet the vision was not complete. God showed him a future beyond a kingdom, a king, a shepherd who would reign forever. My servant David shall be their king. He will reign forever, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Ezekiel perceived the profound truth God would not merely restore Israel. One day, he would give them an eternal king. And under that king, the people would never stray again. Ezekiel awoke from the vision no longer burdened by despair, but filled with an unshakable faith. For though Israel had fallen, God would make them live again. And though the temple lay in ruins, God would dwell not in stone, but in their very hearts. Because when God promises, God fulfills. Ezekiel had witnessed judgment. He had seen Jerusalem's destruction. He had beheld death and despair. But God had yet more to reveal. In a vision, Ezekiel was taken to a place beyond imagination, a place where God's presence would once again dwell with his people, a place utterly holy, the temple restored. It was the 25th year of the exile. Israel remained in captivity, Jerusalem still lay in ruins. But one morning, the hand of the Lord came upon Ezekiel, and in vision God brought him to a high mountain. There before him stood a great city, yet at its center was something far greater, something glorious, something clearly not of this world, a temple unlike Solomon's, unlike the one destroyed. This was grander, perfect in every detail. Ezekiel, overwhelmed, could only whisper in awe, "Lord, what is this?" At that moment, a celestial messenger appeared, instructing him, "Son of man, see with your eyes, hear with your ears. For all you behold, you must declare to Israel." Ezekiel walked through the temple, its gates towering, its courts stretching wide. The altar stood centrally, and God's presence seemed to saturate every stone. But most astounding was not its sheer size nor its magnificent pillars. It was what was about to happen. Ezekiel looked up. A brilliance pierced the sky. From the east came a consuming fire, a roar like mighty waters. It was the very glory of the Lord returning. Ezekiel fell face down, for he understood he was witnessing the moment he had yearned for all his life, God's glory returning to his temple. Then God spoke. "Son of man, this is my throne's place. Here I will dwell forever among my people. Israel shall stray no more. Never again will they profane my holy name." Ezekiel wept, for God's presence had indeed returned, and in his heart he knew the eternal truth. God had never truly abandoned his people. They had abandoned him. But now the covenant would be restored, yet the vision continued. Ezekiel saw something more. From the temple, from the very altar, flowed a river, first a trickle, then a stream, then a mighty torrent. Wherever it reached, life burst forth. Deserts bloomed, trees flourished, and seas teemed with fish. Even the waters of the Dead Sea turned fresh. For this was no ordinary river. This was God's river, the river of life. Then God declared, "Wherever this river flows, everything will live. These waters will heal the land. Wherever they flow, life will flourish, and my people will dwell in peace forever." Ezekiel's heart swelled, asking if this was real, if they would truly return home. And God affirmed, "I will bring you back. I will give you new hearts, and you shall never stray from me again. For this city will no longer be called just Jerusalem. From this day it shall be named, 'The Lord is there.' Ezekiel awoke from the vision, his heart pounding with profound revelation. For he understood that this temple was more than stone. It was a promise, a symbol of a coming kingdom. One day God would dwell not in temples made of stone, but in human hearts. One day the Holy Spirit would come, and God would write his law on the fleshly tablets of men's hearts. For the greatest temple is not made with hands, but of flesh and spirit. And on that day, the whole earth would be filled with his glory. Ezekiel saw judgment, saw Jerusalem's fall, saw exiles' despair, but he also saw restoration. For God never abandons his own, for his faithfulness endures forever. And Ezekiel's prophecy still echoes today, reminding us that God is just yet also merciful, that he punishes sin, yet always leaves the door open for return, that where death reigns, he brings life, and that one day his glory will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea.